Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome. I am here with Sonya and the best and brightest companies to work for. We will be recording this webinar today. You will be able to view it on the Best and Brightest website next week. It will have all the slides on there. If you are on this call and are in need of any SHRM or HRCI credits, a SurveyMonkey will go out to you later on this afternoon. If you can please fill that out and submit it back, we will send you your certificate from attending today. I just want to give a quick little intro. Sonya Bielecki is a senior HR consultant with Express Employment Professionals. She has worked as a leader in the human resource industry for over 20 years. Having worked in all areas of human resources during her career, Sonya's experience and skills allow her to focus on the vision of each organization while providing services to enhance, improve, and support a strong HR functionality necessary in every company. Sonya is here today to tell us the differences between furloughs and layoffs and what factors we should be considering when deciding what's best for our companies. Right now, I'd like to welcome Sonya. Go ahead.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning, and I'd like to say a special thank you to the Best and Brightest company for inviting me to be a speaker today. I am representing Express Employment Professionals, who has been involved with the Best and Brightest for over 10 years, winning recognition as a West Michigan Best and Brightest company for all 10 years and an Elite Award winner for 8. Express Employment Professionals is recognized as the best and brightest company to work for in the nation. Anyone who works with them knows that they're willing to support their customers in any way possible. We're grateful for their commitment to helping us and other organizations be the best for their employees. Best and brightest, thank you both Gina and Alicia today. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Express Employment Professionals, we are a premier workforce solution provider. I represent the Grand Rapids, Michigan office, which is one of over 820 franchises across North America, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, and we serve our clients with recruiting and staffing services. We also support our clients with coaching, training, manufacturing, consulting, leadership development, employee well-being, and of course, HR solutions and consulting. Normally, I start webinars and virtual conferences with recognizing during this time all of our healthcare workers. If you are on the phone today, we so appreciate you being on the front line. Most of you attending the call today, I'm assuming, are in manufacturing or business of some kind, operations, and primarily HR representation. You are most likely the front line of employment in turbulent times during the COVID-19 pandemic. You are supporting your employees every day and have a very daunting position of determining layoffs and possible restructures and furloughs at this time. This is no easy job. You're all amazing, and I'm here to offer what support and guidance I can. My hope is that when the webinar is completed today, you will have the answers you were looking for while knowing the information presented is with the Express Care promise of pillar of being compassionate. Throughout this, you'll hear me talk about information and what I consider legal speak, meaning this is all I can give you, and it might seem impersonal at times, but it is not. We're empathetic to what you're going through, and hopefully best practices for furloughs and layoffs today will support and assist all of you. So kudos for what you do every single day. And with that, let's go ahead and get started on the topic of furloughs and layoffs. On our first slide is just a recap of what Gina explained to you. My name is Sonya Bielecki, and I'm a senior HR consultant with Express Employment Professionals. I specialize in organizational development and executive level leadership. And today's goal of this presentation, first and foremost, will be to define furloughs versus layoffs. We are encouraging questions, so please type those in on your participant feedback portion of the screen. And then also the next topic, our goal is going to be how do benefits and PTO vacation play a role in furloughs and layoffs. And then finally, we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts for FMLA and workers' comp as it relates to furloughs and layoffs. I do want to prepare all of you that I am not going to read off every slide as I just did for the goals of the presentation. I'd like to encourage engagement and interaction. The slides are primarily there for you to read, and I'll talk in more detail as we continue through the slides. Let me go back. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to define what is a furlough, what is a temporary layoff, and what is a permanent layoff. I should let everybody know while you're looking at the Webster Dictionary definitions of these items that a furlough is offered to associates due to a lack of work primarily, and usually consists of the employee being unpaid by the employer, but their benefit offerings, primarily medical, is still offered and the employee can still pay their employee deduction. Whereas a layoff, both temporary and permanent layoffs, is a type of termination, especially within your HRIS systems, and that is unpaid through the employer, and also benefits are ended or terminated out of the system, and they are offered COBRA. So with that being said, I'll let you look at that for just a moment, and I'll give you some examples. A furlough can go for up to 12 months. However, generally furloughs in the United States are usually weeks, but it can go up to 1 year. So employers can opt to pay an employee on furlough for up to 1 year of benefits. Pay benefits, yep. And then the employee is generally responsible for paying their portion of the employee deduction. All right, let's go to the next slide. So here we have a slide that is just talking about furloughs. And as we talked about earlier, furloughs are generally have an effective date with a proposed return date. Right now we can use the COVID-19 as a clear example of a furlough potential. Let's say we were still on stay-at-home order through Governor Whitmer in the state of Michigan through April 13th. If I would have been an employer and in a position to do so, I would have chose to furlough my associates and granting them their employer-paid benefits during that time and with an expected return date of April 14th. This would definitely constitute a furlough, and employee-paid benefits would still be available, and the associate would have an agreement that all associate-paid deductions are paid in full by the time the associate returns to work. That's really important. If we're furloughing associates with the agreement to continue their employer-paid benefits, and the employer is making the employee to continue the responsibility of their employee deductions, that must be written in their furlough letter. And we'll talk about templates and what should be on those a little bit later in today's discussion. While on furlough, an associate can file for unemployment, and they're not, again, generally paid by the employer at all during a furlough. I would advise everyone to look up work share programs through unemployment, especially if you're in the state of Michigan. That is another opportunity as well, and it can be a little bit helpful during this time. I'm not bringing that into play during our webinar, but definitely encouraging everyone to look at that option. Let's go to temporary layoff. A furlough can be a temporary leave, but a temporary layoff is separate from furlough or the termination or the temporary leave statements. A temporary layoff is designated for a period of no longer than 6 months, and the associate can be called back to work when the work picks up and they are needed back. During a temporary layoff, the associate or employee is definitely termed out of the payroll system, including benefits, and also receives a letter of COBRA offerings. COBRA being your benefit premiums at what the employee had elected through the company they were last employed, and they would be then responsible for 100% of the premium amounts and not just employee deductions. Do we have any questions, Gina?
No, looks like we're good so far.
Great. Okay, Now, the difference between a temporary layoff and a permanent layoff is a permanent layoff is exactly what you might assume. It is permanent, and there is no anticipation or agreement to call the associate back to work at any time. In the permanent layoff notification, it should have a statement that employees are encouraged to look for other work following their effective layoff effective date. Associates, again, are unpaid through the employer, and they receive a notice for COBRA and are eligible to file for unemployment. One thing that I always like to talk to employers about if you are laying anyone off on a permanent layoff is providing a statement in your notification that if positions become available, what would your requirement be? Would they have to reapply? Because we certainly during a permanent layoff would not want to let them know that they could be called back to work. So give some consideration to what your company would want to express to the associate when putting them on permanent layoff if any other openings would become available in the future. Okay. So over the last 3 weeks, I've done quite a few webinars on the HR 6201, the Expanded Unemployment, CARE Act, paid time, expanded FMLA. And one of the biggest topics and why I put this in here has been, are we required to pay out PTO or vacation time to our associates if they're on furlough or leave? Or temporary layoff or permanent layoff? Obviously, I think the answer for permanent termination is pretty obvious. However, there are a lot of considerations to take into account before making that final decision. First and foremost, what is the company's leave policy? Combined with that, what is the company's PTO and or vacation policy? Recently, I worked with a client who did not put in any statement of PTO availability or vacation availability to the furloughed associates. Yet in their handbook, when I reviewed their vacation policy, it stated that if the employee was off due to a lack of work, they did have the option of using PTO for that time off. So you want to make sure that you're staying compliant with what your actual leave policy is and your PTO and or vacation policy. The other thing to take into account is what is your paid time off? Is it given in one lump sum at the beginning of the year? Is it accrued on a paycheck to paycheck priority basis? Is it given based on how many months you've been on the job? Is it based on what year or what month of the year you were hired? So you definitely want to look at that because in the state of Michigan, it's what time the associate has available to them. I worked at a company where we did PTO accrual, and all the associates could borrow against any amount of PTO that they could earn throughout the entire year. They could borrow that anytime they wanted, but they had to pay back what was not accrued at the time that they left. So you're only responsible for paying out based on your PTO and vacation and leave policy. You're only required to pay out what they actually have available, not what they haven't accrued if you have an accrual process. And what are your state-specific guidelines? I always refer to Michigan because that's my primary home base, but every state has different guidelines and specific acts and laws that we should be looking at when we're looking at, are we required to pay this time out? And then also many clients have expressed to me over the last 3 weeks that values and culture is taking precedence in what decisions they're making. And when I ask, and this has probably been about 9 clients that I've worked with, when I've asked them what does that mean, they say we're doing the right thing. And so I think that on top of looking at all of your leave policy and your PTO and vacation policy is to look at what are your company culture and values and balance that with obviously the financial side of the business as well.
Sonya, we just have a couple questions if you want to answer those now.
That would be great.
Okay, from one listener, it says, I have looked into the WorkShare program for one of my clients and weren't able to find any significant details on it. One of my groups had specific questions on it, and we couldn't find details to assist in trying to answer them. Is there a fact and question place that's about it that she can get this information from?
Yes, and if I try to go find that right now, I'm probably going to lose our connection. So is it okay if we include that in the information that you'll be putting out next week on this topic?
Sure, and I'll make sure that she gets it. If you can let me know, I'll write her name down.
Absolutely, and I can send it over to you today. So I apologize about not fearing technology right now and losing the PowerPoint presentation, but I will definitely get something out. And if they wanted to provide their email, I can send it to them directly as well.
Okay, great. We have one more question.
Go ahead.
What is the best practice if a layoff starts as temporary, but the company later decides that it's permanent?
And I think this question is from Amy. This is such an outstanding question, and I'm really happy that you're bringing this to light right now because it was going to be my next topic. Best practice always is when we're changing the status of employment, so that's really critical. For changing the status of employment, we must notify the associate. So Amy's question is, if in fact the company puts somebody on a temporary layoff, but then later they have to be permanent, I recommend to every employer that you should always have a template. There's a termination template. Let's say somebody has violated policy and you've documented, and best case scenario, our HR professionals out there that you've received the documentation to substantiate the termination, also to have a temporary layoff template, permanent layoff template, so on and so forth, and a furlough template. That being said, best practice and the way to mitigate most risk would be by notifying the associate of a change in their employment status with the next template. So the first one would have said, you're on a temporary layoff that's going to last no more than 120 days. Now, 2 weeks later, the company has had to make some harder decisions, and you decide to put John Q. Smith on a permanent layoff. You would send a new notification stating the permanent layoff and explaining everything to them. Unemployment, their benefits will end, whatever applies there. Okay, any other questions?
No, I just got a few email addresses. It looks like a lot of people want this WorkShare information.
Okay. I sent it to quite a few people, so I'm happy to share that with all of you. Yeah, go ahead. Amy, let us know if we answered your question, please. Okay. So a lot of, I'm going to go back to that. A lot of clients have also asked about, well, what if somebody's on FMLA? So the federal law it states that it's not illegal for an employer to lay an associate off. So right now we're talking about furloughs and layoffs. It is not illegal for an employer to lay an associate off during an approved FMLA leave. What is illegal is for an employer to lay off an associate because of FMLA approval. So in other words, a company can lay off an associate while on approved FMLA as long as the company would have made the same decision if an associate had not used the FMLA or been approved for it. So for audit protection, and this is really big, for audit protection, I always tell employers, please, please, please be able to provide proof of this during any type of employment audit. Now, in over 20 years, I've only been audited once by the unemployment office, and I'm pretty proud of that. And I think it's because I always provide them more documents than they ask for. But we do want to be very careful, especially with federal FMLA and workers' compensation programs, that we are making sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. And, in the case of COVID-19, it's very easy to show that we had to reduce our workforce or lay them off or furlough them based on the pandemic that we're experiencing now. But my teachings today are also about the future and how we should handle it when there isn't a pandemic and there isn't a reduction in workforce. That is a terminology that we have not used yet. A lot of you have probably heard the terminology RIF, which is reduction in force. That is also a type of termination as well and is counted as a termination. All right, next, workers' compensation. Is it legal for an employer to lay off an employee who has an active workers' comp claim? Again, same answer as FMLA. It is long as it's not due to the claim. The employer cannot lay off or terminate an associate if it is due to filing a workers' comp claim and getting rid of the situation. It has to be that it's validated through what the company is going through and so on and so forth, just like FMLA. Now, some of the questions that you might have would be, what should that template look like? This is a time for me to talk through, and I'm going to go ahead and go back to the one slide that gives the definitions so that we can talk through what does an actual template look like. I've already let Best and Brightest know of a more advanced training that I'm going to be doing on this in the next couple of weeks. But I want to talk through how important there are certain templates in HR that can assist not only the associate, and we do need to keep in mind what that communication must seem like to the associate, which we'll talk about in another moment. But the templates are there and are encouraged to be created so that you can create efficiencies within your business. HR is inundated with workload on a regular basis. I can only imagine what all of you must be going through during this time. So by having templates and checklists, you certainly will create efficiencies in your workload, and it'll also support your management and operations team members in supporting you. The other area that a template supports is the finance department of any business. If we talk about someone being on a furlough and their benefits can continue, I have always provided those associates with an invoice consistent with what their normal pay periods would be. And it's an invoice that I send out that says, hey, this invoice is for your employee deductions of benefits as agreed upon on your furlough letter effective April 9th. And these benefits are being taken care of, and the employer is contributing their portion of your premium, and your deductions will continue. This is how much you owe for this period of time. Legally, the associate is not required to pay for their benefit employee deductions while on a furlough until they fully return to work. So legally, an employee is not required to pay their employee benefit deductions until they return to work from a furlough. I've always sent the invoice out weekly to give them the option, reminding them that they can pay in full upon their return, or they can choose to send a check or money order weekly or biweekly, whatever the normal pay periods. You could even choose to send it to a monthly depending on the length of furlough. So I really hope that people know that that's a great thing. And then, of course, the distribution of that would go to finance, payroll, and the personnel file. So that's just one template. What should be included on templates of furlough, temporary layoff, permanent layoff? A lot of people feel like reasons should not be listed for termination. This doesn't include furlough, but I am a big advocate of listing why someone was terminated. In the case of COVID-19, it's very easy to say that we're not deemed an essential employer or our business is suffering severely during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's really quite easy to list those reasons right now because it's pretty much across the board and across the nation. But if we look at other times where this might have to happen and it's not during a pandemic, it would be crucial to decide what that language looks like, right? So you're on temporary layoff due to loss of a significant client and order intake. So you really have to think about what is that standard terminology as far as it relates to furloughs, temporary layoffs, and permanent layoffs. It also should have the name of the associate. It should not be a standard letter, but it should be personalized. It should offer And Sandy, I see your question in just a moment. Gina will interrupt me and we'll go through that. In any letter, I feel that when we are changing people's lives in a negative way, and it's not intentional, laying people off is not an intentional act on employer side, but we're still making a negative impact on our associates, that we should personalize it to them, listing their title or department that they work in or the position. And it should also reference, again, the reason. It should outline, what does that mean for me in PTO? What does that mean for me in benefits? What does that mean for me in unemployment? How do I apply for unemployment? What's the possibility of me being able to apply for a job or be called back from a layoff? What's the anticipated date of furlough and return date? So the more resources you can give an associate, the less confrontation there will be. The more empathy we show to them, the less conflict there will be. Understanding that losing a job is something where they go through denial, anger, all of the steps that we hear so much about with death, divorce, those kind of things, and it's right up there with all of those. So definitely creating templates is extremely important. So we've talked about the invoicing of benefits. We've talked about creating standardized templates for furloughs and all types of layoffs, as well as termination, such as violation of policy and so on and so forth, and having those. The other thing is offering up documents that will help them get the resources that they're looking for. So unemployment right now, employers have the opportunity to complete an unemployment document and send it right to the unemployment office for each person, especially if they're on furlough or temporary leave, waiving the requirement that they apply for other positions. Normally on unemployment, people are required to be looking for other work, but employers can choose to fill that out, again, especially for temporary leaves and furloughs, where they're waiving that requirement and the employee is not required to look for other work while collecting unemployment benefits. How to apply for unemployment benefits. There's a great fact sheet out there that employers can provide at this time as well. And then, of course, I encourage employers that if they have an employee assistance program, that they offer that up for another month. Those are generally very inexpensive and usually under $5 an associate per month. Maybe you keep that benefit available to them for 30 days after their layoff or termination. Okay, Gina, I am ready for questions.
Okay, so what we have here says, how does the payment of employee deductions while on furlough come into play as it relates to cafeteria plans, such as paying premiums with after-tax dollars versus pre-tax dollars?
So this is a really outstanding question as well. So I'm a little leery in giving specifics. What I will say is if it's employee contributions that are pre-tax and the employee is not being payrolled through the employer, it's very difficult for those plans to continue. Generally, what is continued is your medical, dental, and vision. What I would request every employer do as it relates to the cafeteria plans is I would look to your benefit administration. I've used Baron Hendrick State for years, BHS, and I would always call them and ask them specific questions. So whoever your benefit administration is, I would definitely look to them to help you understand what your cafeteria plans are, because again, it's all about what your plan documents say. So a general answer is generally any pre-tax dollar employee contribution cafeteria plans do not continue during furlough or layoff. But again, I'm advising you to reach out to your benefit administration to help you review the benefit plan.
She says, thank you very much. Another question
Thank you very much.
Is how can we waive the requirement that an employee must look for more work during a furlough?
This is really great, Gerald. Thank you so much for this question. This is another item that I will send out as well. So right now we have the work share. I'll also send out the PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Plan, and then also that unemployment document for employers to fill out where it requests unemployment to waive the requirement that the associate must be looking for work. So it is simple check mark on an unemployment sheet that you actually fax over to your local unemployment office in Michigan. I cannot speak to other states without looking them up, but I can send the one for Michigan. And hopefully that answered your question.
He had a part two, and I'm not sure. It says, how can we assist with a furloughed employee getting their benefits faster?
Thanks, Gina. I do understand that one. I believe what he's talking about. And Gerald, please make sure that I'm correct on my assumption here. You're talking about their unemployment benefits. Is that correct? So, yep, he wrote that in, unemployment. So when we do these notifications to our associates saying you're furloughed, you're on temporary layoff, whatever the case may be, what I recommend is that you immediately fax that. Once the employee has signed off and you've signed off, that you automatically fax that over. You don't wait for your unemployment documents to come to you to fill out right now during COVID-19. You're going ahead and you're sending it over, and you're encouraging the associate to file for unemployment that very day, and then the following day you've got your whole your documents that you gave to the associate, and now you fax them over the day after you inform the associate. Does that make sense? So we're telling our associate on April 9th, we're encouraging them to go right home and complete the online application for unemployment benefits. And then tomorrow after 12 p.m., I'm going to fax the unemployment office over the document, letting the associate know that they were furloughed or laid off. And that is really all we can do as employers right now to get this done as quickly as possible. The other thing that can be done too, as I stated with your templates, is making sure that you're offering the resources to associates with their notification of furlough or layoff that helps walk them through unemployment application. There's a fact sheet that can be given to employees too that helps them understand how unemployment is calculated. There's also a sheet that walks them right through how to apply for unemployment. And then, of course, the letter notifying them of furlough or temporary layoff. If you provide them a copy of all three of those, that really does help them get on top of applying. But the employee does need to apply as quickly as possible. And Gina, I think we have another question from Debbie.
Yeah. Do employees who will collect PTO have to wait to apply for unemployment?
So the answer to that is no. And here's why. When someone is notified that they will be laid off or they will be furloughed, there's generally an effective date. So when the associate goes to apply for unemployment, it'll ask for the last day they worked. They can go ahead and put in the last date that they know that they will be working. The other thing is that once the claim comes to the employer is going to have to document and provide back to the unemployment agency what amounts of money this person received in the last quarter and all recent employee payments, which would include commissions, bonuses, PTO, so on and so forth, fringe benefits. So at some point, it'll all catch up to each other. But my recommendation with everything that's going on currently is that as soon as the employee is notified of the actual effective date, that we're encouraging them to go ahead and apply for unemployment. And on the section where they're asked what is the last day worked, that they post that out to the last day they are known to be working based on their notification.
we've had a few questions on all of these forms you have mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible for you to send them templates or copies of these forms?
So as far as the templates go, so the forms that I will be sending to everyone are the WorkShare program, all of the unemployment documents, and information on the payroll protection plan. The templates that I've been encouraging everyone to create is not something that I can provide you with. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is I don't know your PTO or vacation policy. I don't know what your leave policy is. And those templates for furloughs, layoffs, and terminations are designed specifically for those policies listed in your employee handbook. So if I were to give you one that includes information that's not consistent with your handbook, I wouldn't be providing good information. So that's something that as a consultant people can look to me to assist with on a project basis, and I'm very fast at getting those done for individuals, but that's not something that I can just provide as one blank template because every company is different.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other? I thought we'd have a lot more questions.
There's another one.
Okay.
Thinking of unemployment info to give to employees to make processes easier.
Yeah, the two big ones right now, Laura, and thank you again, that's a wonderful question. The two big ones right now for the associate to receive is the fact sheet and the actual document that tells them step by step how to apply for unemployment. And then the most important document to give to them is the notification so that they can, if asked, they can verify that they received a notice of furlough or a notice of layoff from their employer. On the employer side, it would be the document that I've referred to that I'm going to send, and I'll send all unemployment documents, employees' unemployment documents and the employer unemployment document, I'll send those. But for the employer side of it, it's the one where it's waiving the requirement for the associate to be looking for other work, which should give many employers on this call today a sigh of relief. I've had many questions asked, what's the incentive for our employees to come back? Remember that employees actually being offered work have to comply with the requirements set forth right now in the HR 6201 and Advanced Care Act and upgraded paid leave. They can't just say I'm not coming back to work because I make more in unemployment than I do at work. So keep that in mind that if we do have to report out to unemployment, that's what assists with the determination of unemployment.
Another question popped up.
Okay.
Can you use PTO and vacation time after your last day worked or no?
So Samantha, I'm looking at this question and I think it's excellent, but I'm going to make an assumption to answer it, and if I'm wrong, please let Gina know. Can you use PTO vacation time after your last day worked? If I'm looking on the assumption side, I'm assuming that this person then has been furloughed or laid off, and the answer to that question is yes. They would be required to use the PTO and vacation time during non-working hours where there wasn't enough work for them to be working. So that is my assumption. They cannot receive PTO or vacation time while they're actually clocked in. Now the other thing is if somebody is permanently laid off, so they're terminated, they're encouraged to look for other work. In the state of Michigan, we are required to pay out any unused and owed PTO based on your PTO and vacation policy on their final check. Other states are different. If they're terminated in the state of California, they must receive all payments at the moment of termination. So just be leery of your state laws. I hope that helped you.
Okay, it looks like we have another question for you.
Great,
yep.
Great.
Okay. We had someone file for unemployment, but we don't intend to lay them off at this time. They sent an email cancellation to the unemployment office, but we still received notification of the claim. Should we still protest it because we got the claim from the unemployment office?
Yeah, and I love this question, and I love it for so many reasons. So the word protest, so I'm going to take that completely out of the equation on this one. I always like to remind employers that we don't make any determinations. We only tell the truth. So we give them the information that's truthful, and the unemployment office in every state makes the determination based on unemployment laws. In this particular case, and I believe it was Emily asking this question, in this particular case, this one's kind of an easy one. We don't even have to protest it. We simply share with unemployment through a fax document stating that this employee is still working and has not been laid off, and the employee was notified of this upon receipt of unemployment claim. And you just fax that right over to the unemployment office, and it shouldn't be an issue. But we do still have to report, and that's the key word there, is report. So if something comes up, and like I said earlier, you know, this person got ahead of the game and they thought they were going to get laid off, so they went ahead and quickly filed for unemployment, but lo and behold, we're not laying this person off. It's just simple reporting. But if you were to call an employee back, maybe they're an essential employee, and you say, hey, we have work, and the first statement out of their mouth is, I'm not coming back to work, and you ask them why, and they say, it's because I make more money than unemployment, we should be documenting that conversation immediately and reporting that to the unemployment office. So I think Lou Ann has a question. Gina?
Yeah. Please clarify. You said Michigan is required to pay out all unused PTO and vacation when a person leaves or is terminated. We have a policy that states we don't do that.
So, Luann, thank you so much. If I did not communicate that correctly earlier, I thought I had. Michigan is required to pay out based on PTO and leave policy. So if your policy currently says that if somebody is terminated for violation of policy or, you know, whatever the case may be, and we don't pay out any accrued PTO or vacation or remaining PTO or vacation, you do not have to in the state of Michigan. You are absolutely correct. You're required to if it states in your employee handbook under the PTO, vacation, or leave policy that you will. So in other words, if it was in your handbook and you didn't pay it out, that's where you'd be non-compliant in the state of Michigan. Okay.
Okay, and it looks like another question. A laid-off employee filed for, I'm assuming it's unemployment, but his claim was denied. Are claims being denied even if the reason was under COVID-19?
So not to my knowledge. It would be very interesting to actually review the denial letter and what the unemployment office has to give a reason for a claim being denied. The best that I can tell everybody, if we do see claims that are denied and there's not a clear reason for it, how do I say this? It's just a cluster mess right now. It really is. I mean, we've expanded the CARES Act, so the federal government is now providing a $600 unemployment benefit, and then on top of that, we have our own state benefit. And to my knowledge, the CARES Act has been signed and delivered, and everything is good, but our state is still not ready to hand out the $600. I would assume that we're still working on the red tape and the paperwork. So I would think that some claims could be denied if they don't have verification from the employer saying that this person has been in fact laid off. I find that hard to believe right now. It could be a glitch in the system, and I would always recommend to the associate to contact the unemployment agency or look up their filing online. And to employers, if you receive that notification or the employee brings it to you, to go ahead and fax over the denial letter with the notification that you gave to the employee letting them know they were laid off or furloughed, so that you can support them to turn that denial around as quickly as possible. Okay, and Gina, do we have any more questions?
Yes. Do you have a way to contact unemployment about the unemployment filed by an employee that is still working? I called yesterday. They said it would be a 2-hour callback, and yet have had no callback.
Yeah, so I do not have a different way. I wish I had a magic number and we could all go behind the scenes. I don't. I'm hearing a lot of that from my clients. So Laura, thank you so much for that question. But unfortunately, we're all waiting and everybody is trying to get through, and it is very difficult right now. The only other thing that I can say is that there are ways to email the unemployment office and there are ways to fax things to the unemployment office. So if you have a specific concern, you can basically do all 3 ways, the call, the fax, and the email. I don't recommend doing that unless it's absolutely necessary, but they're inundated. I mean, I can't remember what the last number was, like 3,300 people as of last Friday were unemployed in the state of Michigan. So it's, the numbers are growing exponentially every single day. So they are inundated. I'm so sorry for your wait.
A couple more questions. Laura had a second part to her question. She's worried about the PPP loan with her last question that she asked you about unemployment. So in order for, in the document, and I'm only going to speak briefly on this because I'm not looking at the document right now, but my understanding is that you actually have to be payrolling your associates to receive the PPP. They can't be on unemployment. And the reason for that, the reason why the PPP loan came out is so that employers weren't forced due to economic crisis to lay their associates off, and that they could continue with them on the payroll for up to 8 weeks. There's a lot of talk about the PPP loan being forgiven for employers, and the document that I'm going to be sharing with everybody should give you more information, but it would not cover unemployment. It would only cover if the employer is willing to continue payrolling the associates for the designated period of time. Thank you. Looks like we have a question from Tracy. Can you file the unemployment compensation notice to an employee on, is it MIWAM? Yeah, MIWAM. You should be able to, Tracy. I have not gotten on there recently to try to file as normal. I would be interested to see if it can handle the actual abundance of compensation notices or unemployment documents responses on MIWAM, but I would still go to MIWAM to do so. And she's also asking, how is anyone or everyone getting along with filing and submitting the PPP loan? So the document, I don't have those specifics at my fingertips right now. I did get something from the legal team that I work with at Rhodes McKee last week. So again, I will send that information along with the PPP information out to everybody. And I see that, Gina, can you go ahead with those last two from Laura? Well, you answered the one about the PPP getting along. She said she's still on payroll and got a full paycheck. Thanks. Yeah, so that definitely would qualify for the PPP loan from the effective date of the stay-at-home order through the longevity of 8 weeks. I'm almost positive, don't quote me, but I'm almost positive it's 8 weeks. So as long as the person is still on payroll and getting full paycheck, that would definitely qualify under the PPP on the basic, right? A basic qualifier. There's lots of other things that we need to consider that are qualifiers as well. But as it looks right now, Laura, I think everything looks pretty good. Okay. Fantastic.
Well, this group has been absolute. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Did you have a slide with your contact information?
Yeah, so let me get to the last one.
Because I'm sure that you're going to get an abundance of emails or phone calls.
So I will let you know as a senior HR consultant with Express Employment Professionals, and for those very important people that have joined today through Best and Brightest, I will give everyone a free consultation of 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll be happy to help and speak to anyone as needed. My goal is to support companies and employees in being successful during this time. And I thank everybody. What a great group, and you're doing an outstanding job. Keep going.
Well, you've definitely given us a lot of information today, and with the questions that we have gotten, you've helped a great deal of people today. Thank you for taking the time out and explaining everything to us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen,
that ends the call today. Again, we will get in touch with each and every one of you with these forms and documents that Sonya has talked about, and we will email those over to you. I will send out a Survey Monkey if you could fill that out and let us know how this presentation went today. And I hope you all have a great afternoon. Stay healthy.